Usually when we talk about history, there's this expectation of, well, monuments, like massive stone temples, heavy bronze statues, ancient texts locked away in climate-controlled vaults.
Right. It feels really distant, untouchable even, like something you have to go visit rather than something you actually carry around with you.
Exactly. We expect history to be, heavy. But then you look at the world of folk belief, and suddenly all that heaviness just kind of vanishes.
Yeah.
It is the absolute definition of history hiding in plain sight.
Oh, for sure. It's just woven right into everyday life.
Yeah. And today, for this deep dive, we're looking at a stack of sources that, well, they seem completely unrelated at first glance.
They really do. It's a pretty wild mix.
Right. We've got translations of historical religious texts. We have these dense academic analyses of Asian esoteric Buddhism. And this is the best part, the design notes for a modern, quirky Taiwanese Lucky Charm brand called Lingamjiji.
Which is such a fascinating jump from ancient texts to a modern product design document.
Exactly. And our mission today is to figure out how a contemporary origami Lucky Charm, which, spoiler alert, is shaped like a phallus, connects a deeply personal story of human vulnerability to, like, a 4,000-year-old religious evolution.
An evolution that stretches across India, Tibet, Japan, and Southeast Asia. It's an incredible lineage.
It really is. So what if the ultimate shortcut to understanding the history of Asian religions was folded out of a single piece of paper designed to fit right in the palm of your hand?
I love that framing. Because before we get into the ancient gods and, millennia of theology, we really have to look at the human element first.
Right. Why do modern, totally rational people still crave Lucky Charms?
Exactly. And to understand that, the design notes actually point us to the creator of this Taiwanese brand, director Wang Bojun.
And his background is pretty fascinating because he is the absolute last person you'd expect to design an esoteric amulet.
Oh, completely. He used to be a firefighter.
Right, a profession that is entirely grounded in the visceral, physical reality of survival.
Yeah, Wang was dealing with life, death, and just massive trauma on a daily basis. And, when you're constantly exposed to the most unpredictable, chaotic moments of human existence, you tend to develop a very thick psychological shield.
You'd have to just to cope.
Exactly. And for Wang, that shield was hardcore skepticism. His philosophy was entirely pragmatic.
Right. The sources say he basically believed that if you do your job properly, if you train hard, and if you're fundamentally a good person, you don't need magic.
Right. You rely on your team and your gear. The notes even mention this childhood instructor he had who told him that any god who only protects you if you wear their specific amulet is, well, a petty god.
A petty god. I mean, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And frankly, not worth worshiping.
It's a remarkably coherent skeptical argument. It frames reliance on a charm as like a dismissal of personal responsibility. I mean, in a burning building, you want a functional hose, not a protective spell.
Right. You want water, not vibes. But that armor of skepticism, it kind of cracks when you introduce family.
Oh, it always does.
Yeah. The turning point for Wang happens when he observes his estranged mother. I mean, they hadn't been close for over a decade.
Yeah, over a decade.
Right. And yet, he finds out she is meticulously folding these paper lotuses, writing his name on every single one of them, and burning them at a local temple to protect him while he's out on duty.
And that specific act just completely shattered his worldview, because it wasn't about the metaphysical power of the paper lotus itself. It was the realization of what that object actually represented.
Yeah. I mean, think about the last time you carried, like, a lucky pen into a stressful exam or wore a specific tie to a job interview.
Or your lucky socks for a big game.
Exactly. If we strip away the superstition, aren't these objects just tangible anchors for our very human vulnerabilities? A lucky charm isn't necessarily magic.
Right, it's more like a physical carrier signal.
A carrier signal, yes. For love, for hope, or just for psychological support when we feel completely out of control.
And that realization mirrors the exact reason ancient religions created tangible symbols for abstract concepts in the first place. I mean, humans are fragile.
We really are.
We face disease, natural disasters, economic ruin, and the abstract idea of quote-unquote hope is incredibly hard to hold on to when your harvest fails or a loved one is sick.
Yeah, you can't just hug the concept of hope.
Exactly. We need what Wang refers to as visible belief to cope with an unpredictable world.
Visible beliefs, that's such a powerful phrase. And that concept leads Wang to another really fascinating figure in the notes, Gershon Legman.
Oh, Legman is fascinating.
Right. In 1953, Legman, who was an American scholar dedicating his life to studying taboo subjects, he folded the very first origami Shiva lingam.
Yeah, he was using the delicate, precise art of origami to bridge subjects that polite society deemed vulgar with, like, high art.
And Wang took that concept of the folded paper, that visible belief, and decided to create his own version to help people navigate modern anxieties.
Which naturally brings us to the core symbol of the charm itself, the lingam.
Let's dig into that. Because we know Wang is designing a paper charm shaped like a phallus. And to modern ears, I mean, that sounds like a joke or a novelty item you'd buy at a bachelorette party.
Right, it sounds totally absurd today.
But the sources take us way back to the Indus Valley around 2000 BC, where the Shiva lingam, which is a representation of the god Shiva's phallus, was actually the absolute center of spiritual life.
And it wasn't just an isolated phenomenon in India either. Ancient cultures globally recognize the profound power of this symbol.
Everywhere, really.
Yeah, we see it in Bhutanese wall paintings, specifically designed to ward off malevolent spirits. We see it halfway across the world in the Roman fashionum.
Oh, right, the Roman amulets.
Exactly, where these phallic amulets were worn by battle-hardened soldiers and even placed on children for protection.
It's wild to think about. Long before organized religion as we know it today, this symbol essentially represented three core human desires.
Right.
First, positive energy, just the raw, intimidating power required to push back darkness and evil. Second, reproduction.
Which was crucial back then.
Totally. In early societies, fertility wasn't just about having a cute family. It was about labor, survival, literally creating the workforce. Wealth, basically. And third, connection, representing intimacy and the fundamental human drive to bond with others.
And there's a specific Hindu myth that perfectly encapsulates this raw, primal energy. It's so vivid.
I love this myth. Lay it out.
So it describes the god Shiva retreating into the cosmic sea, sinking into the deep, primordial waters of the universe. And his goal is to accumulate the ultimate energy required to create the world.
Okay, so he's just down there meditating.
Exactly. He meditates there, gathering this immense, unfathomable power for thousands of years in absolute isolation.
But he takes a little too long, right?
Yeah, he's a bit of a perfectionist. He finally emerges from the cosmic sea, just absolutely radiating with this concentrated creation energy, only to look around and realize
that Brahma and Vishnu had already created the world while he was meditating.
Right, he's literally late to his own party.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
But also really dangerous given what he's holding on to.
Incredibly dangerous. He is standing there holding an apocalyptic amount of raw life force. If he unleashes it, the sheer intensity of that creation energy will obliterate the newly formed fragile universe.
It's just too much power for the new world to handle.
Exactly. So, to save the world, he separates his phallus, the source of this immense power, from his body, and the energy is so intense that it shatters into countless fragments.
Right, raining down to Earth is universe seeds.
Yes, universe seeds which become the physical lingams worshipped by early humans.
It's a beautifully epic story. But let's pause and look at the cultural shift here. Because today, if you walk around treating a phallus as the ultimate symbol of life and divinity, you're going to get some very strange looks.
Or get arrested.
Or arrested. Exactly. It's considered completely taboo.
Yeah.
So when exactly did human culture decide to take our most primal symbol of life and just lock it away in the dark?
Well, the shift is directly tied to the agricultural revolution.
Okay, how so?
Early human societies were often animist or matriarchal. They were deeply connected to the visceral realities of nature: hunting, gathering, the immediate cycle of birth and death. The symbols they worshipped were raw and direct, because their lives were raw and direct.
Right. There wasn't any room to be prudish when you're just trying to survive the winter.
Exactly. But then we figure out how to plant seeds. We start moving around. We build fences.
And the moment you build a fence, you invent property.
Precisely. As society shifted toward patriarchal agricultural models, inheritance became the driving force of civilization. You needed to guarantee that the land you worked would pass to your legitimate heirs.
Oh, I see. So controlling reproduction suddenly became a matter of state security and economic survival.
Yes. So the state and the priesthood have to control the narrative. They can't have people worshiping raw, unchecked sexual energy.
That makes total sense. They systematically desexualized the divine.
They really did. Organized state religions began abstracting these survival symbols into higher, more detached theological concepts. Sexuality and raw creation power were heavily regulated by the priesthood.
Turning what was once this ubiquitous, universally celebrated symbol of life into something shameful, dangerous, and taboo.
Exactly.
So fast forward a bit, and there's a massive target on Shiva's back. You've got this wildly popular, chaotic symbol of absolute creation, and suddenly, this highly structured, intellectual wave of Buddhism starts sweeping across Asia.
And Buddhism cannot allow a god who just snaps his fingers and breaks the rules of the universe. It threatens their whole theology.
Right, so they have a choice. Do they try to erase Shiva completely, which might start a massive rebellion, or do they do something far more manipulative?
They chose the theological equivalent of a hostile takeover.
A hostile takeover, I love that.
It really was. Early Buddhism actively rejected Shiva. To understand why, we have to look at the core of Buddhist philosophy, which is dependent origination.
Okay, let's make sure that concept is crystal clear for you listening. I like to think of dependent origination like a giant, inescapable machine of falling dominoes.
That's a great visual.
Yeah, every single event in the universe is a domino falling because another domino pushed it. It's cause and effect, karma. If you do good, a good domino falls. If you do bad, a bad domino falls.
That is the perfect analogy. The universe is governed by strict, impersonal cosmic laws. But Shiva's followers viewed him as the absolute creator, the uncaused cause.
Right, so in the domino analogy, Shiva is a guy standing outside the machine who can just reach in, pick up a domino, and completely change the outcome whenever he feels like it.
Exactly. And you cannot run a religion based on strict personal accountability and cosmic laws if there's a loophole god who can just override the system.
It undermines their entire moral framework.
Completely. So the Buddhist texts responded with these really violent myths of subjugation. They wrote narratives where powerful Buddhist figures like the fierce protector Vajrapani literally physically attack and dominate Shiva.
Who they refer to as Mahesvara in these texts, right?
Yes, Mahesvara. Vajrapani steps on him, forces him into submission, and basically demands that he accept the Buddhist teachings.
It's literally a corporate acquisition. It's like a new tech startup, moving into a city, buying out the dominant local monopoly, and keeping the old CEO on staff, but strictly as the head of security.
That is exactly how they played it. And the brilliance of this strategy really cannot be overstated. The local populace deeply loved Shiva. If Buddhism tried to erase him, the people would have rejected Buddhism entirely.
So by defeating him, but integrating him into the Buddhist pantheon as a Dharmapala, a protector of the Dharma, they solved a massive public relations problem.
Exactly. They proved their guy was stronger, establishing the supremacy of Buddhist teachings, but they let the locals keep their beloved god.
They just put him in a Buddhist uniform.
Yes, they harnessed his immense, previously destructive power and redirected it to protect Buddhist teachings and its followers. And this is the exact moment Shiva transforms into the wrathful, terrifying Buddhist protector known as Mahakala.
Okay, but I'm looking at the timeline of his evolution in our sources, and there's a massive disconnect.
Oh, yeah. The geography changes everything.
Right. We leave India with Mahakala as this terrifying, wrathful warrior who destroys obstacles.
Yeah.
But by the time this exact same deity pops up in Japan as Daikokuten, he's a plump, smiling guy sitting on rice bales, holding a lucky mallet.
It's a huge shift.
He entirely lost his edge somewhere over the Sea of Japan. How does that happen?
Well, the transformation is driven entirely by the environments he traveled through. Let's start with his journey into Tibet. The Tibetan Plateau is one of the harshest, most unforgiving environments on Earth. It's cold, barren, and survival is just a daily struggle.
Yeah, you can't exactly just sit peacefully under a Bodhi tree and meditate on the nature of reality when you are freezing to death.
Exactly. The Tibetan monks recognized a profound theological truth. Extreme poverty and a lack of resources are massive obstacles to spiritual practice. If you are starting, you cannot focus on enlightenment.
So Mahakala adapts to the needs of the people.
Yes. The texts detail the emergence of white Mahakala. His fierce, wrathful energy isn't diluted, it's just weaponized against poverty itself.
Wow. So he becomes a wealth deity, not by being gentle and handing out coins, but by violently obliterating the obstacles preventing prosperity.
Precisely. He aggressively clears the path so practitioners can actually focus on the Dharma without worrying about their next meal. But as Mahakala travels further east into Japan, he encounters a completely different culture and a totally different physical environment.
And the most ridiculous linguistic coincidence in religious history.
It really is. It's wild. Mahakala arrives in Japan with his translated name, Daikukuten, which means Great Black Sky.
Okay, Great Black Sky.
But in Japanese, the Chinese characters used to write Daikoku Great Black happen to sound exactly the same as the name of a deeply entrenched, pre-existing Shinto agricultural god named Kuninushi, which means Great Land.
Wait, so because of a pun, the entire trajectory of this ancient god changes?
Literally because of a pun. Because the names sounded identical, the everyday populace naturally began to conflate the two deities. The fierce, dark-skinned, multi-armed warrior from the Himalayas slowly merged with the local Japanese god of farming, soil, and the autumn harvest.
The visual transformation is just jarring. I mean, he loses the weapons, the fangs, the wrathful face. He transforms into this jovial, plump god of wealth, becoming one of Japan's famous 7 lucky gods.
Right.
It proves that religious evolution isn't always driven by elite monks debating high theology in some quiet temple.
Yeah.
It's driven by a farmer who just wants a good harvest and uses a linguistic coincidence as an excuse to make a terrifying foreign god a little more approachable.
Absolutely. Grassroots needs always reshape high theology. Everyday people need solutions for their immediate worldly struggles.
Which brings us to the most extreme example of grassroots adaptation in Southeast Asia.
Thailand specifically.
Right. While Tibet and Japan completely changed his job description and his appearance, Thailand kept his original raw physical form, the phallus, but totally changed the rules of engagement. I'm talking about the Thai Palad khik.
Yes, the honorable surrogate phallus. This is a fascinating sociological case study because it creates a clear, undeniable divide in Thai religious practice. Our academic sources heavily contrast the Palad khik with formal Thai Buddhist amulets, which are known as Phra Kriang.
Wait, this is where the double standard absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah.
Orthodox monks bless these formal Phra Kriang amulets, but there are incredibly strict rules attached to them.
Very strict.
You are forbidden from wearing them in places considered spiritually unclean.
Yeah.
No bars, no casinos, no brothels. But the Palad khik, you are actively encouraged to wear it in those exact places.
Yeah, you take it everywhere the other amulet can't go.
How does traditional religion justify allowing this symbol in the gritty, messy parts of society?
Because technically, it bypasses Buddhist jurisdiction entirely.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Palad khik is a direct, unbroken descendant of the ancient pre-Buddhist Shiva lingam animism we discussed earlier. It predates the monastic rules of spiritual purity.
It's essentially a VIP pass for reality.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, Orthodox religion tells you to suppress your earthly desires, stay pure, seek enlightenment. But human beings are messy. We want to win money, we want to drink, we want romantic success. We need a talisman that doesn't judge us for being human.
And the Palad khik bridges that massive gap between the high ideals of organized religion and the imperfect, gritty realities of everyday survival. It proves that no matter how elevated or strict the belief system becomes, human culture will relentlessly carve out spaces and symbols to protect the messy parts of life.
Which brings us all the way back to the present day, to director Wang and his modern Taiwanese Lingamjiji charms.
Right, the origami.
He looked at this incredibly chaotic 4,000-year-old scattered history from the cosmic sea to the Tibetan plateau, the Japanese pun, and the Thai casinos, and synthesized it into what he calls the 5G system.
It is a masterclass in modern cultural synthesis. He basically mapped the scattered historical avatars of Shiva directly onto specific modern psychological anxieties.
What I find brilliant is that he doesn't just treat luck as a generic concept. He contrasts the energies.
Yeah.
Take the green charm, for example, the general lingam.
Right.
He bases this entirely on the Tibetan Mahakala, that aggressive, obstacle-destroying wealth energy. Wang targets this strictly at entrepreneurs and business leaders who need to break through stagnation.
But he recognizes that not everyone is an entrepreneur. If you're an everyday worker, that aggressive energy might actually be disastrous for your stable job.
Right, you don't want to accidentally blow up your cubicle.
Exactly. So for the salary worker, he designed the yellow charm, the samurai lingam, drawing from a Mongolian interpretation called Gampo. This energy is all about grounding, enduring the daily grind safely, and protecting steady income.
And he does the same thing with the Japanese Aikokuten energy, the purple charm. He targets that at steady investors who need long-term vision and calculated strategy, contrasting it with the aggressive green charm.
He also addresses the need for boundaries versus the need for connection. The red charm, the demon-breaking lingam, uses the subjugation energy of Vajrapani. It is explicitly for purifying negative energy, finding the courage to say no, and cutting toxic ties.
Whereas the pink charm, the Jiangyuan lingam, is the exact opposite. It's the Tai Palad Khik energy. It's for boosting interpersonal charm, networking, and attracting romance. He literally took ancient theological coping mechanisms and turned them into a color-coded psychological toolkit.
It is the ultimate democratization of belief. By categorizing these ancient archetypes, Wang acknowledges that human struggles aren't one size fits all.
Definitely not.
The CEO facing bankruptcy needs a fundamentally different archetypal energy than the person trying to find the courage to leave a toxic relationship.
It's an unbelievable journey when you step back and look at it. I mean, we started with a former firefighter watching his mother fold paper lotuses out of fear and love.
Yeah.
That simple primal need for a visible belief took us back to the Indus Valley, up into the freezing Himalayas where poverty is an enemy of enlightenment, over to Japan, where linguistic pun changed the face of a god, down into the gritty nightlife of Thailand, and finally into a modern origami charm.
The aesthetic forms change constantly, stone, bronze, paper, but the underlying psychological needs of humanity remain entirely constant.
But there is one final profound piece to this puzzle hidden in Wang's design notes. Beyond the 5 colored charms, he proposes a concept he calls the 6th lingam, the inner observation lingam, or vijnana.
Vijnana, which translates to consciousness itself.
Right. This charm isn't about looking outward for wealth or romance or protection. It represents the mind of the person holding it. It is a reminder that whether you are holding a solded paper lotus from your mother, an ancient stone carving, or a modern, brightly colored origami charm, the physical object is, ultimately, just a mirror.
Exactly. It can only reflect the resilience and willpower that is already inside of you.
The true source of the magic. The grit to break your personal demons, the discipline to create wealth, the vulnerability required to forge genuine human connections. None of that has survived for 4,000 years because of a rock or a piece of paper.
Right.
It has survived because human consciousness is incredibly stubborn. It's constantly projecting its will into the world, finding ways to adapt and thrive no matter the obstacle.
The charm provides the focal point, but the power has always been strictly human.
So we leave you with this thought. Think about your own modern life. The next time you find yourself holding on to a lucky charm, whether it's a special coin, a piece of jewelry, or a specific pen before a big meeting, take a second to ask yourself, are you borrowing its power, or is it finally giving you permission to use your own?